Today what we're going to be doing is making a tier list for all of the mythical Pokemon in Reg J. If you guys want to see a full tier list going over all of the mythical Pokemon and how they're combined with the other restricted Pokemon and maybe even all of the other Pokemon in Reg J, please think about it, let me know. But for today, I feel like it would be a very good start to just rank out the mythical Pokemon so you guys know which Pokemon are actually worth building teams around in your own games for Regulation J. We have all of the Pokemon right here, and I'm also curious as to everyone who's watching this what your tier list looks like. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be putting things like Arceus and Megarden near the top, but I think there's a lot of Pokemon that slot into this A slot right here that you probably aren't thinking are going to be busted that are actually really, really good, especially in a closed sheet Reg J format. So starting things off, what we're going to be doing is starting with Jirachi here, and what I'm going to be doing is breaking down everything you really need to know about these Pokemon. We're going to be taking a look at their abilities, their base stats, any sort of signature moves they might get that actually set them apart. I think one really, really big thing about playing with these mythical Pokemon is leaning into their strengths and leaning into the things that let them do stuff that no other Pokemon can. It's pretty obvious that a lot of these mythical Pokemon aren't as good as other restricted Pokemon. Things like Koraidon or Miraidon or Kyogre and stuff like that. Those Pokemon are obviously a lot better. They have a lot more base stats. But these Pokemon get abilities and moves and ways to play the game that nothing else can. And so leaning into what makes those unique is actually going to be really, really important in this format. So starting off with Jirachi here, right? Jirachi is going to get Serene Grace, one of the best abilities in the game, being able to double all of the secondary effect chances. So when you use things like Iron Head, which normally has a 30% chance to flinch, it's going to be double. 60% chance to flinch and skip your opponent's turn on one of their mons is going to be really, really good in VGC. Commonly, this thing has just seen play with like a Choice Scarf. Like Choice Scarf, Iron Head's pretty good. If you don't want to play that, sometimes in singles, where this Pokemon you should see a lot of play, you'd go like Body Slam, which would normally have a 30% chance to para. It's down 60, and you can go for like a para flinch strat with something like, you could even throw in like a Thunder Wave here if you wanted to, and even like weave in like a Protect. This is kind of how people have played Jirachi in the past. It also gets access to like this is the standard single set for Jirachi. Its base stats, just like a lot of these mythical Pokemon, are going to be 100s across the board. So it's faster than most mons in the format. It can be built physical. It can be built special. I think Jirachi is one of those mons that can be played a bunch of different ways. One of my favorite ways to play Jirachi is going to be actually with like Room Service. I think it's one of the best mons for the Room Service, which is going to basically lower your speed by one stage if Trick Room goes up. So you can put Protect on it because Protect's one of the best moves in the game, obviously, especially in these restricted formats to avoid things like Fake Out. But you go Protect, and then you go Trick Room. And so you can decide if you want to Trick Room. If you want to be an imprisoned Trick Room user, you can also do that. And then from there, you can then use things like Encore to trap your opponent into wasting Protects on those Protect turns if you want. Remember, you're going to be slower than them because you have Room Service. And then you also have access to like Iron Head, which you can use if you're faster. If you want to pair something like Jirachi with something like a Tornadus, which is, really, really good. What's Tornadus weak against? Things like Ice, Rock, Electric, other stuff like that. Jirachi covers up for a lot of those weaknesses. And what's Jirachi weak against? Like ground stuff. Torn covers up for a lot of those weaknesses. So you can play a fast mode and go like Prankster Tornadus to set like Tailwind and enable Jirachi's partner or all the other Pokemon on its team. And then just go for like big Iron Heads with like a Jirachi that has like, I think you only really need 121 on, 121 would be like right here to be able to outspeed most mons at like a +1 from like a Bleak Wind or an Icy Wind. But in Tailwind, this would still outspeed something like a Shadow Rider. So you could go Jirachi Torn and go like Tailwind Iron Head, or what you can do is not use Torn, use something completely different and go just Trick Room, Room Service, be slower than everything, and then just Encore Iron Head stuff. So Jirachi is one of those mons, that can make a lot of magic happen. It's also one of the few mons in this format that gets things like Life Dew. Very, very underrated mon. It also gets things like dual screens. Taking a look at some of its moves here, it gets Dazzling Gleam. Doom Desire is one of its really, really cool moves. I just recorded a stream with Doom Desire Jirachi recently. It's like a super strong future sights. It's based off your special attack, 140 base. Very, very strong. It gets access to Encore, like we said. It can be an Expanding Force user, Fake Tears. It gets Helping Hand, Icy Wind, Iron Defense. So many cool things. Meteor Beam Jirachi is definitely viable to like pick off Chi-Yus that aren't being very respectful of its Steel Psychic typing. Like I said, it gets dual screens. Skill Swap on Serene Grace is always a fun tech to use. Thunderbolts. Everything. Trick. You can build it super aggressive. You can build it super defensive. You get its Gravity if you want to pair it next to Darkrai. Understanding what all these mons get is super, super important. And so where would I put Jirachi? It's kind of hard to say, right? I think one of the biggest things holding it back is its, base stats. It's not really that bulky. It's not really that strong. So you kind of, if you want to build it in most sets, you kind of have to go like heavy bulk investment on this thing. And then normally you would probably want to go like heavy SPDF investment and then cover it up with something else like Intimidate on an Incin or something like that to cover up for that weak defense stat. That's probably what I would do. And where would I put it? I think Jirachi is a good example of a mon that's like not broken and it's not bad. It can do a little bit of everything, jack of all trades, master of none, but not as good as something like a Mew. So I would put Jirachi kind of like in here. I'm going to put it in B for now, but depending on where the tier list goes, it might end up dropping to C. It's probably going to be near the bottom of the B tier because I think it's one of those mons that's definitely viable, but unfortunately it has a lot of weaknesses to a lot of like common mons in the format, and you know, things like Shadow Rider give it a hard time, and everyone's already bringing a lot of ground tech to pin things like, you know, Miraidon and stuff like that. So Jirachi falls prey to a lot of those moves, but at the same time, it has a lot of neutralities against a lot of the common things in the format. Like Water Spout Ogre gives it like a really, really hard time. Electro Drift from Miraidon gives it like a really, really hard time. You have to blow Terras to not get KO'd by like neutral things. So Jirachi just has kind of a hard time making it work. You say A or B for Jirachi. It's a bit passive. It can do some cool stuff. I think it can do some cool stuff, but a lot of the things you realistically can do with a Jirachi, you can do with something like a Cresselia with Lunar Blessing, and you wouldn't have to waste a restricted slot on that. That's another really big thing about like Jirachi in these like mythical formats. So let's take a look at Keldeo. I think Keldeo is another mon that is pretty slept on. I've used Keldeo a few times in a lot of my battles on YouTube. I have a couple new Keldeo videos coming out relatively soon. But Keldeo is one of mons that I really, really like. It gets justified as its ability. And you see there's two different forms of Keldeo. There's a regular Keldeo and there's Keldeo Resolute. And when you go Keldeo Resolute, the base stats are going to stay the same. And it has a very good base stat line. 108 speed is actually really good. This is actually one of the strongest water types in the game, by the way. It gets a move called Secret Sword, which is basically like a Psyshock, but it's a fighting Psyshock. So Keldeo is one of the few mixed attackers in the game, being able to hit with all special attack moves, but since this hits defense instead of SPDF, you can become a mix sweeper and kind of hit for both. Very, very cool mon. I wanted to talk about this though. If we were to sort things by water type on Showdown, Keldeo is one of the strongest water mons in like the game. It's only 1 point weaker than Volcanion, and it has much better coverage than things like Palkia, right? And it's faster than Palkia, not Palkia Origin. But like, you see how it works? Like Keldeo's actually really strong. Like a lot of these Pokemon like Primarina, Walking Wake Bundle, people see these as really, really strong water mons. And that's because a lot of water mons get moves like Hydro Pump and other really strong water moves that are usually boosted by some sort of water steroid. So people are used to water mons being able to do a ton of damage, and it's because they have so many multipliers attached to them. So if you attach those same multipliers onto a Keldeo, you're just as strong as these other water sweepers that are more than strong enough to pick up KOs in these formats. That being said, Keldeo gets a lot of really cool tech. Justify's not really going to be helping out that much. It gets the same ability as all the other, like, sort of, whatever their sort of justices, right? But Keldeo gets access to, like, Hydro Pump. It doesn't get Scald anymore. I don't think it ever did. Did it ever get Scald? I don't remember. But it gets Hydro Pump. It gets Icy Wind as some tech. I think this is how most people want to play Keldeo. A lot of people like to sash it. You say beat up on Keldeo. It's not worth it. It only has 72 attack. So most people play Keldeo kind of like this, and I don't really think that's what you need to be doing. Notice how, like with Jirachi, we showed what most people do, and then we showed what I like to do. This is what most people do with Keldeo. You kind of put like a Ghost Hair or something on there. It's okay. You can go Stellar, you can go Ghost, you can go Dark, stuff like that. Those are all good. The way that I like to play Keldeo is, again, leaning into kind of what makes it unique. So we play into Keldeo here. And instead of looking at, like, obviously you're still gonna have the Secret Sword probably, right? But instead of just going like triple like sweeper, look at some of these other moves that it gets. It gets things like coaching, right? It gets things like taunt if you wanted to go taunt. It gets things like upper hand to be able to, let's say you want to like have a Shadow Rider that you don't want to get KO'd by Sucker Punch, or you don't want to get fake outed by something and you're going for like a combo team. You can go look at all this extra tech that Keldeo gets. Very, very cool. There's no real combination of like water sweepers that get these combination of moves. So imagine if like an Urshi Water, you know, we're thinking of like coaching, you know, big fighting attacks, water type with around a base 100 speed tier, was faster, could hit for special or physical, and like also got upper hand. That sounds like a really, really cool Pokemon. You can build Keldeo Vested. It gets access to like Flip Turn. It gets access to like Pain Split. Muddy Water is a cool option on Keldeo if you want to go for some AoE damage. Roar, Sub, it gets Surf. Vacuum Wave got buffed being a special, or, you know, Keldeo gets Vacuum Wave, which is a special attack, quick attack basically. Bunch of really cool tech on this guy. It gets Quick Guard if you're going to be playing against like Thunderwave Grim instead. I think it's a very usable mon. But that being said, it's definitely like a glass cannon, and I think with like Reg J, yeah, we're doing a tier list today. I think with Reg J, you're not really trying to trade with like glass cannons in the format. I think you want to mitigate a lot of damage and play for value. So like wasting a sash on a Keldeo means it's not on an Ursh, it's not on like a Shadow Rider, it's not on something else that would actually use it a little bit better. So Keldeo is going to be our first mon in the C tier. I don't know if any of these mons are actually going to end up in D. We're going to find out. Keldeo is definitely usable, but it's one of those mons that, like, if I have a Keldeo and my opponent has, like, Miraidon Arceus, like, I'm cooked. Like, I don't think there's a line into that for Keldeo to really have a big impact without me massively outplaying my opponent. That being said, Keldeo is very good if your opponent, if you're restricted to your mythicals, pin your opponent's restricted to mythicals already. Like one of your other restricted or mythical pins both of theirs, or you have really good mons that pin both of theirs and keep them off of your Keldeo, Keldeo can do a really good job of like locking out a lot of like non-mythicals from the game. Like I said, the taunt, upper hand coaching, being able to cover things with like Muddy Water and Secret Swords, very, very good at pinning like non-restricted Pokemon. Keldeo is solid regardless of where it is. Yeah, I like it a lot. You say Twitch failed to notify me until I came in from Discord. Yeah, I don't think Twitch sent out notifications today, so we're a little bit sad, but we are doing our tier list here. So we're gonna take a look at Diancie. I think Diancie is another mon that like people don't really give like an honest shake. I have a Diancie video dropping on YouTube tomorrow, by the way. It gets Clear Body, which people think is a pretty bad ability. It makes so its stats can't get lowered. I actually think it's a very good ability in this format. Very, very good. People like to build Diancie as a Trick Room mon, right? Its base stats are right here. 50 in HP is low, but it's kind of built like a Shuckle, right? 150, 150, and then 50. Very, very cool mon. It gets a move called Diamond Storm as its signature move. This actually hits both of your opponent's Pokemon and has a 50% chance to sharply raise your defense by 2. This is going to be standard. People with this guy like to go like Protect, Trick Room here, Diamond Storm, and Body Press. That is how this mon is played by almost everybody. You can put like a Covert Cloak on it. You can put like a Leftovers on it. There's so many different ways to play Diancie, but this is how most people do like to play it. It's very standard. You got to max up that HP stat, and then from there, usually people like to go heavy into Spadef and rely on the Diamond Storm procs to give us the defense, and then they go like a speed reduced, like 0 speed Diancie, and you know they kind of just do what they can with what they have, right? Very, very cool mon. Rock Fairy typing is very, very slept on in my opinion, and I actually think Diancie is one of my favorite mythicals. Like every single time we've ever had a chance to use Diancie, I always rank this mon very, very high. Fairy is so underrated, and Fairy without weakness of fire is what makes this Pokemon good. Let's think of all the other really, really good Fairy Pokemon. Arceus is one, but now let's take a look. Magearna. Keep on going, keep on going. Where is it? Where is it? Zacian. You know, those have fire weaknesses, and people know. So, like, when they build these teams, they're like, oh, I can have a huge fairy weakness because, like, I have good fire coverage. That's super, super standard, right? Diancie says, like, I don't care about your fire coverage. I'm a rock type, right? And so, while you have those weaknesses to things like Kyogre, you have those weaknesses to, like, grass types, ground types, fighting is neutral, you can really get in a good spot where you bully your opponent out of pinning you. You can cover up for a water spout weakness with a Y-Guard. You can cover up for, you know, like what grass attack is going to get you in this format. It's kind of hard to say. There's not really that many. You know, I think that Diancie can just be in a really, really good spot is what I'm trying to say. How I like to build this Pokemon. The video that I have coming out tomorrow, I think I have a physical Diancie with like weakness policy, right? I have it with weakness policy. I still think I have Trick Room on it. And then I have like Play Rough, right? And then I have Play Rough, I have Body Press, and then I have Diamond Storm. And we're actually leaning into the fact that Diamond Storm is a physical attack. So what I like to do is like, I actually think the team is going to be like Keldeo, Jirachi. And what I do is I flip turn into my Diancie, sorry. Proc the weakness policy, give myself a +2 Trick Room, go into like an Ursulin or something really bulky, and then just like dump truck things with like +2 playoffs, +2 Diamond Storms, get those defense boosts, you know, big body press damage. Really, really cool stuff. I think like leaning into these slight differences while still maintaining the same like Trick Room, body press, Diamond Storm playstyle, that's what really helps in like Reg J, because like when you don't have the play rough here and you have like body press, Diamond Storm, they just wall you with like a Koraidon. They just like dump truck your teammate every single turn because you can't really do that much if they don't Terra, right? And in this one, I can be just like, oh, Koraidon, you're not going to Terra? Player if I win the game, right? And you got to lean into the fact that like these mythical formats, the Reg J format specifically, is a close sheet format. There's nothing wrong with like cheesing your opponent with like a weird move that they shouldn't be respecting. So where would I put Diancie in this format? It's kind of hard to say, but I think Diancie is an A tier mon. great bulk, great coverage, unique combination of AoE multi-target like signature move that can sharply raise your stats. 50 base speed is the exact speed you need to have to correctly play TR. It speed ties things like Kali, Iron Hands, Ursa, Luna. You're in a really, really good spot here. And it commands a lot of respect. I think a lot of people say, Diance's so bad, you could just use Magearna. But if everyone's using Magearna, what you can do is just slot a Magearna counter into your team and then counter all of the people that are trying to counter the Magearna as well. And then you're fine. I actually always do well whenever I play with this Pokemon. I think it's a lot better on Sunroom teams than Magearna is, just my personal opinion. Because like Magearna wants its teammates to get like KO'd and do stuff and like trade effectively, right? Diancie kind of just says like, no, I can just protect with my teammate, get up TR, and then now you can't break the Torkoal and the Diancie without one of us just steamrolling the game. Very, very cool mon. Doesn't have a ton of weaknesses to a lot of those common types like we were talking about. Doesn't have that weakness to like Shadow Rider or like Glacial Lance or anything weird. Very, very cool mon. I like it a lot. So we're going to take a look at Skyman here. Diancie can be both physical or special and still have decent bulk. Yeah, I think it's such a good mon. And I just want to say, if you guys are here and you're having a good time, please think about letting me know. Please think about letting me know if you guys want to see other tier lists. If you guys want to see me do a full tier list where we go over all of the mons, including like the Koraidons, Miraidons, Shadow Riders, and everything else in Reg J. Please think about letting me know. Please think about dropping a sub on the YouTube channel too. I'm going to give my shout out here. We're trying to get to 50K before the new Legends games come out, and we're making a bunch of content around this stuff, so please think about supporting that stuff. That being said, let's get right into Skyman and Shaman here. I think both of these are really good. We're going to talk about both of them differently because they are played very differently. So let's take a look at Shaman's Skyform. So you can see the differences between these two is going to be a 127 base speed on the Skyman. They have Natural Cure and Serene Grace here, but Skyman gets a lot more aggressive. They keep the same base HP. It gets 3 attack for some reason. I don't even know why. But like, it loses a bunch of its defense and Spadef and gets a lot faster and stronger. And in doing that, it really leans into leveraging the Serene Grace ability. Similar to Jirachi, it goes for like air slash flinches. But I think Skyman gets a lot of like really cool tech. It gets things like Tailwind. I actually have a team coming out in a couple days that uses Sweet Scent on this thing to sharply lower both of your opponent's Pokemon's evasiveness, and I pair it with like a Darkrai with Dark Void, right? I actually think that's going to be a lot of fun. You know, people wouldn't really see that coming. You really want to lean into what makes these Pokemon unique. It also gets another signature move called Seed Flare, which has a 40% chance, doubled into 80 when you're Skyman, to get a sharply lower Spadef on your opponent. So you can pair this. What I've done is I've paired this with Miraidon, go for a big Seed Flare if they want to, you know, pop Grass Terra or something like that, or do something to block the Miraidon, or go Ground Terra. Goodness forbid them to block the Miraidon attack. You just melt them with a big Seed Flare, get that sharp lower Spadef, and just pop them with Miraidon. Very, very cool stuff. I think this is a really cool mon. This is kind of how everyone's going to be playing, and not really the Sweet Scent. A lot of people like to put like Earth Power. Sometimes they put Dazzling Gleam there. Sometimes you just put Protect or something. It can be built with Sash or Cloak. I've also seen Scarf. It's very popular. It's a cool mon. I think it's a little bit aggressive. If we compare it to anything else, it's more comparable to like a mixture of like Keldeo and Jirachi, but like with more of a Tailwind mode. That being said, I don't actually think Skyman is very good. It's actually a little bit too weak. Having only a 120 and having to fulfill the role of like a sweeper, like let's compare what this thing does to like a Shadow Rider. Shadow Rider has like 30 something special attack on this guy. It has like 30 more speed. It hits double AoE. Like if you're comparing two Sash users, Shadow Rider's going to dump truck this thing like 9 times out of 10. And so, like, obviously Shadow Rider would be like a much higher tiered mon, and that doesn't mean that Skyman's bad. It just means that like it's really hard for this Pokemon to like find a way to work in a format where it's dominated by things like Fluttermane base 135, Shenpao base 135, Miraidon 135. You know, all these other fast mons make you actually have to get up your speed control to use this Pokemon first, and it's just really, really hard. I would put this in the C tier above Keldeo. I think this is rating it a little bit low, but I've actually played a lot of teams with Skyman, and people are so deathly afraid of getting flinched by Air Slash, they throw the kitchen sink at this thing every single time. And there's only so many times you can Protect Bait or Pivot Out before you're just like losing tempo. And when it finally comes time for this Pokemon to do something, you just don't get the KOs because it's not that strong. Or you miss a Seed Flare because it's an 80 or an 85. It's an 85. You just miss the Seed Flare, or you miss the Air Slash. It's a hard Pokemon to play. It's a fun one to play, but it's not really amazing. And so it's going to be the top of C tier. It's funny how something can be at the top of C tier, and I'm talking so badly about it because I expect more from it. but something like Keldio's in the C tier, and I only had good things to say about it. I think that's kind of funny. Let's take a look at Shaman. Now, it's weird. I actually think regular Shaman is better than Skyman in this format. It loses a lot of speed, but it gets 25 more defense and spadef. That's so big because it keeps the same moves, right? It keeps the same stuff. You still get Tailwind on a solo grass type. You're not 4 times weak to Icy Wind anymore, right? You just keep that good, just solid grass types are so usable. It's so good. So this one likes to play a little bit more like Leech Seed, kind of protect. You kind of build it a little bit bulkier, and because you can still have the Seed Flare here to correctly enable your teammates. You can put Earth Power on it, bunch of cool stuff. Like, I do like Shaman. I think it's very good. What I've done with this guy actually is used it with like Electric Seeds and paired it with like a Miraidon. So if I leave like Miraidon Shaman, I can like pop off with like a Tailwind, Volt Switch, do a bunch of cool stuff like that. Shaman definitely helps against those ground types. It would be so problematic for Miraidon, and being a solo grass type makes it a good pivot for Miraidon if I want to come in and soak some damage. So it's a good pivot into things like Lando and stuff like that. I think it's a solid mon. That being said, it's obviously not going to be amazing. It's not going to be as good as Skyman. I'm going to put this guy... I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, little guy. I like this one more, but it's the first Pokemon in the D tier. Base 100s across the board, but very limited forms of... Like, base 100s here, right? It's similar to the Jirachi, right? But at the same time, it has to ask for a lot of help. You need a lot of babysitting to make this thing work. And it doesn't get a lot of the cool tech things like Jirachi does. Yeah, it gets Tailwind, and yeah, it gets Seed Flare, but that's not the same as, like, Trick Room, Life Dew, Serene Grace, Iron Head. If it kept Serene Grace, I think there'd be arguments for putting it a little bit higher because it could still run things like the Air Slash, right? And it could still run a bunch of other like cool tech moves. But like, honestly, like the best thing this thing probably could do is like a really weird like Sash set with like, Endeavor Quick Attack. You know what I mean? Like you could do these things. These things definitely have viability in this format, but I don't really think that there's going to be that much more you're doing. So while I like this Pokemon, I would probably kind of put it up here. I'm going to be realistic with you guys and say if you're going to be using this thing, it's going to be a very uphill battle. You're going to be having a hard time making Shaman work. That being said, it's at the top of the D tier for now. So let's take a look at Magearna. Magearna's kind of busted. Magearna. Base Shaman should get Heal Pulse. Yeah, it doesn't even get Heal Pulse. Like, if it had some way to, like, Life Dew or Heal Pulse, I think I'd put it a lot higher. So there's a couple forms of Magearna. This is the one you get for, like, having a complete Pokedex in Pokemon Home. They all have the same base stats, so it doesn't really matter which one you use. But the base form Magearna gets a really cool ability called Soul Heart. This Pokemon's special attack is raised by 1 stage when any other Pokemon faints. This can be your opponent's Pokemon. This can be your teammate. And this happens regardless of, like, if you knock them out, if they knock themselves out, like... It's awesome. Like, they can take out from Sandstorm, and you're going to get that +1 easy peasy lemon squeeze. It's one of the best Pokemon ever made. This Pokemon is so freaking good. It's commonly built like Protect. People like to go for Trick Room on it. It gets a signature move in Fleur Cannon, which is basically going to be a Fairy type Overheat or Leaf Storm. Very, very cool move. I tend, when I played this mono, use some little bit different, and people like to go Flash Cannon here. That's kind of how people like to play this thing, and they make it super bulky. You got to go for that max HP, and then people like to put a lot of special attack in this thing, even though you don't really need it, and then they go with that, like, min speed set, right? Zero speed, min speed set to, like, work in TR. People commonly like to play this thing with, like, Annihilate here. When they go with, like, turn 1, they'll go with, like, a Choice Scarf, right? Final Gambit, Annihilate, right? And so Annihilate will die. It'll KO something else. You'll get a +2 on your Magearna. Your Magearna will Trick Room, and then, like, you bring out, like, a Torkoal and you just, like, win the game. That's how, like, everyone likes to play this Pokemon. It's super easy to beat when played that way. The way that I like to play Magearna looks a little bit different. So when I play Magearna, instead of going with, like, a... some people like to go, like, Citrus, because Magearna, the problem with it doesn't have any healing, right? It doesn't get Recover. It doesn't get any sort of weird way to, like, heal stuff. I think that's its biggest problem. It does get ways, but people just don't do it. So instead of putting, like, leftover... I think a lot of people like to go leftovers on this thing and just kind of wait it out, play a little bit of a long game. I like to play this thing with a safety goggles. That's how I like to play it. And then I go Trick Room, and I like to go Calm Mind on mine. I like to go Calm Mind for a couple reasons. I like having that little bit of bulk. I think you can weave in a lot of stuff. Calm Mind is pretty good for... The way to beat Magearna is to not let it get the Soul Heart boosts, right? So they like to, not really kill its teammate and then just, like, throw damage into the Magearna without letting it get the boost. Calm Mind says, like, you can throw damage into me, but I'm going to be not dying the best that I can after I get this Trick Room up. So I'm going to get some bulk to actually outvalue your Storm, while at the same time giving me some strength that I can use my own power with the, shove the damage back. And then from there, instead of going with the Floor Cannon, I like to have Draining Kiss to actually give me that sustain. So like, if you want to throw the kitchen sink at this guy, you're going to go through Calm Mind, Draining Kiss, and you can't put me asleep. I can have a defensive Terra. I like to play this thing in Ghost Terra, just so you can avoid that fake out if you need it. And then the last mod is go Flash Cannon. Good stab move. Magearna doesn't need to get all the KOs. It just needs to be the last mon standing. And so this set gives us the most amount of options to do that, in my opinion. I still build it very bulky. I still go full HP. I only really like to play it like 76 points. I think this is bump here. Yep, so you get from 74 to 76 right there, and then you just throw the rest into defense, rely on your Calm Mind, it will build up that SPDF stat. So it's a pretty easy set, right? I think this is pretty nice, and it's one of my favorite mons in the format. I think it might be the best Pokemon in the format. Steel Fairy is one of the best types in the game, and you can't be sleeping on Magearna. This Pokemon's absolutely busted. Obvious S tier choice. This thing, kind of dictates how the format goes, in my opinion. I would say half the games you play on ladder are going to be against various Magearna TR teams, and kind of just having a Magearna on your team gives you the ability to play TR. It's kind of like the Lunala of this format. If you remember what Reg I was with like Miraidon Lunala, they're kind of going Miraidon Magearna and going for a very different play style with that. But you can put seeds on this guy. You can put so many different things on it. Very, very cool mon. I think more people should use it outside of like those Annihilate teams. I've also built fast Magearna. I've built Magearna like to be the recipient of like baton pass evasion stats. I've done 3 or 4 different Magearna teams, and all of them are a lot of fun, and I think more people should experiment with this thing, because there's a lot of cool stuff that it can do. It also gets like, if you want to be that guy, it also gets like shift gear, right? You get a +2 speed, a +1 attack, and just start being like, bro, I'm the captain now, right? You could do that. No one's saying that you can't. It's a cool set. It's technically fast enough to make that work. Really good, but it may need a bit of setup. It could be weak to haze users. That's the thing. It's like, what haze users are actually in Reg J? The answer is none, because the format is not one that's built around that much setup. Like, no one's out here using Murkrow. That's not a thing. Like Haze Pow, Haze Dragonite, that's not a thing in Reg J. And the reason, the honest answer is, since this format is not one that's going to be played in like a best of 3 regional setting, it's just best of 1 close sheet. There's no reason to tech enough for Haze. Shift Gear along with some Soul Heart boost makes it stored power hit. There you go. See fine in the tech. I think Calm Mind's actually still better because it's 2 boosts, but like it raises your special attack. But that's cool, right? I think it's definitely viable. Taking a look at the next mons, we have the full Deoxys line. Hague is more of a Reg HD, definitely. And Haze was good in Reg G in some situations, but like there's no reason to use it in Reg J. Let's take a look at all these Deoxys forms. So there's the base form Deoxys, there's Deoxys Speed, Deoxys Attack, and Deoxys Defense. We're going to start with Deoxys Defense because it's my favorite of all of them. I actually like Deoxys Defense a lot. One of my very first Reg J videos was Deoxys Defense, and I think people sleep on this one the most. But if you take a look at all these guys, they get a lot of different stats. So they have a base total of 600. The Deoxys Defense gets 160 in each respective defense. They all have base 50 in HP, but then they get like different stats. There's base Deoxys, which is like just kind of aggressive. It's 150, 50, 50. It's pretty good. You have Deoxys Attack, which takes some of their bulk. You have 50 in each stat. You basically go from a Pheromosa into like a Super Saiyan Pheromosa. And then Deoxys D has the, decent attack and special attack, but then 160s in the respective defenses with a 90 speed, which is actually very good. And then Deoxys Speed says, screw all that, I'm going 180 speed, and that's kind of how it goes. Deoxys Defense, they all get pressure, by the way. It's one of my favorites. It gets Trick Room, right? What sets this guy apart from a lot of other mons? Let's take a look at, like, Diancie, right? A lot of the mons that have these, like, humongous base stats over here, right? And defense and special defense, they don't have good HP, right? And the problem with them not having good HP is they don't get any recovery moves, right? We don't get recover, right? Deoxys D can get Trick Room, have that bulk, and it gets recover. So like if you want to be a Deoxys player and say you are not passing go, you can. You can play stall. It also gets access to things like Infestation. Or not Infestation, actually. It used to get Infestation. It doesn't anymore. I'm so sad that it doesn't. It used to get Infestation. They took that away from it, I think. What else does it get? It gets access to Teleport is another thing I really like about it. We're leaning into what makes these guys unique. I can't believe they took Infestation away from this guy. But Teleport's really good. You can set Trick Room and then soak damage the turn after and then teleport out to then repin with like a safe swap into your Torkoal. One of the problems with like Trick Room mons, one of the ways to actually beat Trick Room in general is to let your opponent Trick Room And then if they want to go for like a really passive Trick Room board, like sometimes you see people lead like a Mungus and like Indity, or like even like a Clef Indity and go like redirection Trick Room. And you're like, that board doesn't do any damage, right? Like sometimes like, you know, we've seen people go like, you know, let's think of like a board, like, you know, they go Indity Hat, but like Hat doesn't like do any damage to the current board, and then you don't really have anything to fear from that board. And you just kind of wait out the Trick Room terms, and then like dump truck one of them on the last turn of TR, don't let them reset another one, and then you just fold them. So with this guy, with Deoxys D, you can set your Trick Room, and then you cast Teleport, which has a negative recovery and lets you pivot out to one of your other Mons. And so since Deoxys D is soaking the damage, if they're playing that playstyle of not really getting those KOs, you get to go into something else, or goodness forbid, they just KO the Deoxys, and you just get to bring out something safe. But this is a really, really underrated playstyle. Lets you get in something like a Torkoal without having to risk switching it in and getting like dump trucked with damage because you don't know what your opponent's doing. So it's a very, very cool mod. It also gets a bunch of other really cool tech. It gets Future Sight, gets Fling, Icy Wind, Knockoff. It gets Dual Screens, Meteor Beam, right? It gets all the other cool stuff that just like Deoxys gets. I think it also gets Psycho Boost right there. It's going to be a 140, basically a Psychic type Overheat or Draco Meteor, you know, very, very cool stuff. Gets Stealth Rocks, Taunt, Faster Taunt, Throat Chop, Trick. It gets all the cool stuff. It gets Cosmic Power. This mod gets a lot of like really, really cool tech, and I just like it a lot. I think it's very, very cool. It also gets things like Gravity. When I played this guy, I played it with Gravity Darkrai. So I went like Trick Room, you know, go for my Gravity after the Trick Room, bring in a Groudon, and just go fold them over, easy peasy. It's stronger than Draco and Overheat. Yeah, it is stronger. It's a 10 base power stronger than Draco and Overheat. Very, very cool. I think it's pre-nerf. They nerfed all those other ones, but they didn't nerf Psycho Boost since only Deoxys got it. So it's a cool mod. I think it's really good. Where would I put it, though? I would put it in the B tier. I think this Pokemon is good enough to be in the B tier. It's hard, but this Pokemon's not going to get O-code by a lot of things. You can just tear it away from Shadow Rider, but other than Shadow Rider, if you have a good redirection Mon, this guy's always going to be able to get Trick Room up unless Imprison's happening. Gets Counter Mirror Coat too if you want to be that person, right? It gets so much cool tech. I really, really like Deoxys D people, and people do not have calcs for it. It's not something that's commonly in people's like building repertoire. So it's a very, very good Mon, I think, and more people should use Deoxys D. Let's take a look at the next Deoxys, which is going to be Deoxys Attack. And this is the one that people like to use the most, I would say. And the cool thing about this guy is it gets 180 in both physical and special. So you can build it like, you know, an extreme speed king, right? And just like swing for the fences, gets things like super power. It gets things like Zen Headbutt. You can even go things like Rock Slide or Knockoff, right? Or you can build it special, right? Right, you can build it special with things like Expanding Force. This is the ultimate Psy Spam Mon, right? It gets Psy Spam. Let's see what else it gets in special. So it gets things like Dark Pulse, Energy Ball, Focus Blast, Ice Beam, Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam Deoxys is actually like super, super clutch. Shadow Ball, like it gets all the tech, right? Thunderbolt, it gets everything. This guy usually likes to get played with Sash. If you want to play the aggressive one, you can build it with a Choice Band. You can go Choice Band like normal Terra. Actually, I have a team coming out in a couple days that uses like this set right here. Deoxys is pretty good. It's pretty good. I think it's a wet noodle though. If you will KO this thing with like an Aqua Jet from like a Keldeo. Like it will fold over. I think like Fake Out actually could just KO this thing from like most Mons. So it's hard to make Deoxys Attack work, but in the late game sweeping situations, this guy comes out, folds people over. I think Sash is probably a better set on most things. Where would I put it? I don't actually like Deoxys Attack. I feel like no one's, if you're beating people and you're using Deoxys Attack and you're getting wins with Deoxys Attack, I actually think your opponent has like major holes in their team because it gets KO'd by so many, like Icy Wind Flutter could like crit KO it. Or like, I actually think like Icy Wind Flutter, if like a Chi-Yu Beads of Ruin is on the board, could almost KO it if you're like a full special attack Flutter. So it's weird. I'm going to put it here. I do not like this thing. I think like Sin gives it an incredibly hard time. It loses the trades versus other Sashes. There are much better like E-Speed Monsters, since people are also over-respecting like E-Speed like Arceus and stuff like that. It's really hard to use the physical one, and Intimidate makes it a wet noodle. It's a single target attacker or a special attacker. It's just kind of hard to use, and I think it's really reliant on like terrain and babysitting, and in almost every situation in which you want to use this thing, Shadow Rider is just better. Right? Am I wrong? I feel like you guys are going to hate me for putting it in A, but I just don't really like it. I think the fact that it also speed ties Shadow Rider is both a blessing and a curse. It's cool that it does that. You can run stuff like knockoff to win the, you know, ties and stuff like that. But if you knock off a Shadow Rider and they throw a Dark Terror there to block anything you're doing, you just like threw everything at the kitchen sink to win a potential speed tie to like even get a chance to play the game, and it's just not good, right? It's a trap. I think this Pokemon is definitely a trap. So we're going to take a look at the next one, which is Deoxy's Speed. Now, I actually like Deoxy's Speed more than Deoxy's Attack, in my opinion. It's Mewtwo we have at home, right? That's Deoxy's standard, right? So that's a 180 base speed, right? I actually really like this guy. Special attack 95, attack 95. I think this guy's really cool. It gets access to like a really fast icy wind. You can play this guy sashed. You can play it with like a covert cloak. You can do so many different things with this guy, and it's actually bulky enough. Like 50 HP sucks, but like 90s are respectable, right? It's kind of like a really shitty Diancie, right? In that situation, it gets all the other cool tech. It does get stuff like Imprison TR because it has the whole like tech line from the Deoxy's defense, right? So all the stuff Deoxy's defense does in like a Trick Room mode, this guy can do in a really fast mode. So you can pair it with like Gravity and pair it next to Darkrai. We've already made that team. Did I make that team yet? Where is that? That's here. I already did that video. It was great. It worked way better than I thought. You could manual terrain. You can hard cast Psychic terrain. You can't play around Fake Out because Fake Out has too high of priority, but you can play around like Aqua Jets, Sucker Punches, because this guy sets a faster Psychic terrain than all those other things. Well, you know what I mean. You can't do it like that turn, but you can like do it for like subsequent turns after. You guys get what I'm saying. You can't do it that turn, but like it gets Expanding Force. It gets all the other cool tech. You can go Meteor Beam on it. It can go a little bit physical, a little bit special. Get access to like a lot of really cool stuff. I wish that it got U-turn. I wish that it did, but it doesn't. I like this mon a lot. I think that the longer we have this format, this Pokemon's going to be better and better because people are going to start to realize what mons you can like leverage advantages against. It's one of the fastest taunts in the format, and everyone builds their speed tiers to be able to outspeed things like Shadow Rider at like a +2 in Tailwind. And this guy says, I still outspeed your mons if you only have that like 112 speed. You know, like most mons, they're in the format. Let's pull up like a Kyogre here, right? They only really go right here, and they say this doubles in a Tailwind to outspeed Shadow Rider, so I'm good. And then when Deoxys still outspeeds you and does whatever niche internet micro celebrity thing it's going to do, and it's paired next to like a weird Scarfmon that still outspeeds that, it doesn't matter that you set Tailwind, like we're still faster, right? And so the best of one mentality from this guy makes it a lot better than I think people give it credit for. I'm going to put it up here. And I think that a lot of people are going to say that these two should be swapped, but like I said, I think Deoxys attack is just bait. I think it's just bait. I don't think it's great. I think you can do better. And all of the things that Deoxys attack does, Deoxys speed does it with a little bit more cushion, a little bit more safety. You don't need to one-shot things. You need to let your teammates one-shot things. So this one enables its teammates. This one's relying on its teammates. And I think the more you can have support mons that enable better playstyles, the better a mon, the more potential a Pokemon has, the less greed is involved with its playstyle. Like, let's take a look at what makes these guys down here not work. They demand a ton of resources from the team to actually function, versus like all these ones up here, you know, just add a lot of value. They add a lot of different like flowcharts and lines and speed tiers your opponents need to be, you know, respecting. So let's take a look at the last one, which is going to be just standard Deoxys. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know if I'm going to use this thing. I don't see a reason to use this guy over Deoxys attack. Because, like, they're exactly the same. You keep the same base speed tier. You get, what, 30 more base respective defense of what you live the Fake Out now. You still get O-code by E-speed from, like, anything, right? So it's basically the same thing. I'm going to put it in the B tier because it's still better than things like Jirachi. But just right behind Deoxys. Like, if anything, it probably shouldn't even make the list. I don't see a reason to use this form when, like, Deoxys attack or Deoxys speed exists. You're kind of playing the middle ground in between both, and it's not really pleasing anybody. So let's take a look at Fion here. What do you guys think of this tier list so far? Do you guys think we should be doing more tier lists? This is my quick break to get a sip of my Alani here. We're about halfway through. So let's take a look at Fion here. So Fion is a little bit of a weird mon that I don't think people want to give a lot of credit for, or credit to. Actually, before we get into Fion, let's do Manaphy first because it'll give better context to how Fion works, right? So we're going to take a look at Manaphy first. I actually have a team coming out tomorrow that uses Manaphy. I'm going to be streaming with it tomorrow that uses Manaphy. So Manaphy is really cool. It's similar to Jirachi and Shaman in that it has base 100s across the board here, but it gets a move called Tail Glow. It's not the only mon that gets this. You can use it with Volby as well, but it gives you a +3 special attack. So that's a really, really cool way to play just maxo special attacks. And it also gets hydration. I think a lot of people don't really realize that this is like a really good ability. Back when weather was like permanent, dude, hydration on like things like Vaporeon used to be busted. And actually in 2017, I took a team to Worlds that used like a hydration team. Very, very cool tech, being able to fully heal you from your status conditions if Rain Dance is active. So on a Rain team, or heck, even if Manaphy wants to set Rain Dance itself, you can kind of think of a Rain Dance as like a really, really bad like Calm Mind, because it gives you that rain steroid to make it so they also can't have like Sunny Day stuff. So like a lot of people put Rain Dance on their Manaphies, and then from there you can build just with Surf. It's one of the few things that actually still gets things like Scald. If you want to have like decent coverage, you can cut the Surf. You don't need the AoE. I don't think it's Muddy Water. Yeah, it doesn't get Muddy Water. That'd be kind of busted, right? It gets Ice Beam though, right? So like this is good coverage. If you want even more like potential AoE, I think it does get the Dazzling Gleam there. So like I've used Manaphy like this in the past with like Fairy. I think it's actually a really kind of cool way to play it. I think it's a cool mon. I really, really like Manaphy. One of the cool things is since you're going to be maxing that special attack after 1 or 2 tail goes, you don't really have to go full like special attack. You kind of want to go like heavy bulk. Decide if you want to have like a bigger weakness to like defense or special defense, and then just have enough speed to outspeed those Shadow Rise, and you're good to go. I think it's a very, very cool Pokemon. You can pair it on teams that like have Rain Dance users. You can pair it on teams that have like Water Absorb users and go for like big Surfs. It's just a cool mon. It's a little bit more one-dimensional than some of the other mons on this list, but I also think that it can be really good. If you disrespect Manaphy for like 1 turn and we get that tail go off, we win. And if you over-respect the Manaphy and like it uses that as bait to like protect or like flip on a weird Terra, you win. So like Manaphy's like almost like a dozo in the format, if that makes any sense. It completely changes the way most people approach matchups into a weird game of like 50-50 where like I could win or I could lose based off how turn 1 or turn 2 goes against the Manaphy. That being said, where would we really put it? I think it's a really usable mon, but the fact that it's so one-dimensional and the fact that you can't just like splash Manaphy onto something like, you know, you can't just put Manaphy on a team. And Manaphy does require like something like a Kyogre, something like maybe a Zenta. There's very specific teammates that work with Manaphy that don't really work. Like you can't put like Manaphy and like Keldeo together. That would be really bad. It would. You can't put Manaphy with like most of these other mythicals. You'd have to put it with something that was like very specific for the team. So I would put Manaphy behind Shaman or Skyman, sorry, in the C tier. It's a good mon. The Manaphy team that I have coming out on Twitch, I think tomorrow, is going to be absolutely amazing. Like straight up, it's going to blow your minds how sick this Manaphy is. I have some very, very fun tech to show you guys with it. But that's, again, like a one-dimensional team that only really works once or twice. So while Manaphy can have a lot of value, it's hard to make it work. It also gets another signature move. It gets a Heart Stamp, right? Swaps all changes with the target. So if your opponent's like using another setup mon, you can just kind of take all their stat changes. So if your opponent's playing like Dozo, you can take those. Kind of cool stuff. I think it's a cool mon. You also get this move. Curse user statuses raise special attack, special defense by 1. Like, it's a weird Calm Mind, right? So it's a cool mon, right? Like, Manaphy is really cool. I tried Manaphy with Psych Up, Kali Shadow. It was okay, but it felt too setup reliant. Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Like, it's a little bit too reliant on teammates. It takes a lot of resources away. And so let's see what happens when you want to run Phione, which is basically the same as Manaphy, but it has less base stats. Now, I've only ever had a Phione once. I don't even know how you get one anymore, but it's the unevolved form of Manaphy, so I'm pretty sure it works with Eviolite. Yeah, this is just me experimenting a little bit. I know how it works. I've used it on Showdown, right? I know Pokeaim really likes this mon. Very, very cool mon. I think it still gets Tail Glow, right? It doesn't get the Tail Glow. Dude, what do you do with this thing then? Like, whoa, what do you do? It gets like Flip Turn, it gets Haze, Helping Hand, Icy Wind. Those are all cool, but I'm not seeing any value in it. I mean, it's fine. It gets all those moves and can have an Eviolite with like base 80s across the board. That's not bad. Like, Helping Hand, Icy Wind is usable. Definitely is. Acid Armor, Alluring Voice is usable to stop people setting up. It's definitely bad. But I don't really see the value in it. I thought it still got Tail Glow. So like I think that the fact that it doesn't get Tail Glow means it's going to have a really hard time doing anything significant. It is so far the worst one in the game. I'm so sorry. maybe Pokeaim can enlighten us at some point as to what this thing does. Just use a Glalie. I wouldn't use Glalie. I think Phiom's better than Glalie, but I'm not seeing the magic there. I think, like, honestly, its best move looks like Icy Wind. I didn't think Eviolite worked on it. It should. It's an unevolved form. It evolves into Manaphy, I think, right? And even if it doesn't, like, its 80s are still fine. Mon's probably just kind of hard to use. Speaking about hard to use, let's speak about what is easy to use. Let's take a look at Darkrai, right? It's the same stat issue Silvally had in Gen 7 and 8, I'm going to think you're going to say. So let's take a look at Darkrai. Darkrai, everyone, Darkrai needs no intro song, right? Darkrai's kind of busted, right? We've used, how many Darkrai teams have I made? I've made quite a few. One, there's like another one here. It feels like every week I'm busting out like 1 or 2 Darkrai teams, and that's just because like Darkrai is like one of the coolest Pokemon in the format, I think. Darkrai is so cool. Bad Dreams is such an amazing ability, dealing chip damage to both their, anything that's asleep really to your opponent's Pokemon, and having access to Dark Void, even nerfed Dark Void, 50 accuracy is fine. You can pair it with Gravity. There's so many other moves that let you like hit things, or sorry, increase your accuracy. You can play Gravity, you can play Sweet Scent. There's ways to like drop their evasiveness with like other moves and stuff like that. I was playing it with like Hydrapple and stuff. I think Darkrai is really unique. And Darkrai does not even need this Dark Void. It just has 125, 135. This is a great Sash user. It's going to outspeed so many different things. Unlike Keldeo, it's still pretty fast, right? It has that same speed tier as the Skyman, but it's threatening to do a lot more AoE damage and completely drastically influence the board. It gets access to like Ice Beams, Blizzards, Icy Winds. You can just go Hypnosis and not have to risk everything on a Dark Void if you want to play around Wide Guard. It gets Snarl, it gets Taunt, Trick, it gets Wisp. You can just play Wisp Darkrai or Thunder Wave and be like that guy. I think this thing is so cool. I think Darkrai is really, really good. I think other than Magearna, this is probably the Pokemon right now that has the most effect on the metagame out of like everything. So, like, you're seeing so many people just play Miraidon right now because they don't want to auto-lose a Darkrai. Or, like, manual casting Misty Terrain or taking Lumberries on stuff just so they don't lose the Darkrai. I think this is one of the few mons that has a really good matchup, too, and, like, both of the riders, being Ice Rider and Shadow Rider. Very, very cool mon. I think Darkrai is great. I don't think it's good enough to go into S tier because I think all Darkrai teams are kind of gimmicky to some extent. So, like, if you basically don't let the Darkrai do the thing, their whole team's gonna like fall apart. So if you have the Wide Guard, or you have like the Misty Terrain, or the Lumberry, their team just like absolutely shits a brick. But that being said, Darkrai is really, really good, and it forces a ton of respect. I would put Darkrai at the top of A tier. Solid mono dark types, good speed tier, good special attack, really unique ability, really unique moves in Dark Void. This Pokemon's great. Like, it's just definitely usable. Very, very solid. So Darkrai is gonna definitely go in the A tier. It's time to take a look at the big boy. You know, dat boy Arceus. Now, Arceus is a weird mon. It has all these different forms, 120s across the board, right? And it has an ability called multi-type. Now, if it holds a different plate, something like, you know, let's take a look at the bug plate. Or let's take a look at like the spooky plate, sorry. Because I just got done doing a team today on YouTube about spooky plate Arceus. Very, very cool. Ghost Terra Arceus. So Arceus, Ghost. It's going to hold the Spooky Plate, right? So the Spooky Plate increases the attacks by 1.2, and then Judgment changes to a Ghost type, right? So this move that it gets called Judgment, which is a special attack, it's a 100 base power, gets a 1.2 boost on it, and you're able to be a Ghost type. And one of the cool things about Arceus is, even if it were to Terra into something like a Ground type, you still do ghost damage with this Judgment here. So Arceus technically gets to be 2 types like all the time, and it's like really, really busted. The fact that Arceus can do both of these things is kind of nuts. You see a lot of people playing Arceus with like, you know, they go Fairy Terra. So we got the Fairy Plate or whatever that Fairy Arceus looks like. So you go like Fairy Arceus with like Ground Terra, right? And you just like perfectly check Miraidon. You're just like, nah, like, we're not, whatever 50-50 you're doing, it's not going to work. One of the cool things about Arceus a lot of people like to do also is just go base form Arceus. And you can just hold any item you want. You can go Arceus like Choice Band, you know, Extreme Speed, Double Dip, Normal Terra, GG, Shake My Hand. You can go Swords Dance Arceus if you want to play something a little bit different. You can go physical or special because it's 120s across the board. I think I also am using an Arceus or 2 team every single week. Arceus is kind of just really, really busted. One of my favorite ways to play it is actually to play it with like Recover. Having Recover, you can tell I actually rank this very highly on a lot of these mythicals. That's why I rank things like Deoxys defense so high. Having recovery options on your restricteds is busted. So having like Recover and Calm Mind, I tend to play my Arceus kind of like this with access to like, you know, you can put Judgment on it. I like to go Dazzling Gleam on some sets, and sometimes I'll go with like a different Terra. I'll go like Fairy Terra, or I'll just use like a Citrus or a Lefties. And I like to go like maybe like a Hyper Voice, or we'll just throw a Judgment on there and be like a different defensive type. I really like these Arceuses that are kind of built like a Xerneas, right? I turn Arceus into a Xerneas when I like to play it a lot. But that being said, this Pokemon can do everything. The team that I featured in today's YouTube video right there is using Imprisoned Trick Room Ghost Arceus, right? And with Tailwind. The fact that it gets almost every move in the game, it does. It gets like almost every single move. Gets Tailwind, Trick Room, literally like almost everything, right? It's ridiculous. Phantom Force overheats, Psych-Ups, Roars, Snarl. This mon can do literally anything. And it has 120s across the board to boot. It is so freaking broken. It feels like Arceus is a mon that can trade like 1 for 3 in like a lot of teams if you give it the right like amount of screen support or like damage mitigation or like fake out support. Arceus is just gonna like outvalue everything. So I think Arceus is like incredibly cracked, and people haven't even started to like scratch the surface of what this thing can do. I don't know if we ever will in Reg J, but like it has a very, very high skill ceiling that people haven't even needed to go search for. This is an easy S tier, top 1 best Pokemon in the format. It's even better than Magearna because it gets all the same moves Magearna gets other than like Floor Cannon, and it can just imprison those moves. Like I can just imprison your TR with this Arceus, or I can just dump truck everything and outspeed everything and outvalue everything because it's Arceus, right? It's so ridiculous. I think what a lot of people are starting to do is they're starting to use Arceus a lot more like Lunala was in Miraidon teams. On like you go like Arceus, like Electric Seeds Arceus Miraidon, and you get that defense boost, and you can Volt Switch or do whatever you want with your Miraidon. You can set Tailwinds if you want, or Trick Rooms if you want with your Arceus. And if they Trick Room you, you just Trick Room it back with Arceus. And you're just like, I don't care. Like, I live forever. I get Recover. Like, you can't Oko me. Like, this is awesome. Arceus just kind of sits on the board forever. What's the easiest way to even get Arceus? Probably Legends Arceus. I think you just gotta, like, beat the game and do a bunch of other stuff. I think you can still get it in BDSP. I know I have one from, like, way back in the day, but yeah, Arceus is super cracked. Mons, you don't need to play with these Mons to play in the format either. I still think you can just play with things like Koraidon and other good restricteds. But like as far as mythicals go, these are the best. So those are the best ones. Taking a look at Meloetta. I did recently make a Meloetta video, but Meloetta is one of those Mons that's kind of hard to play. So if we play with like Meloetta here, what sets Meloetta apart is it has 2 forms, right? It has the Pirouette form and the regular form. And the way you transition in between these 2 forms is by using a move called Relic Song, which actually hits both of your opponent's Pokemon. Decent move, like 75 base power, has a 10% chance to put both your Pokemon to sleep too. And then you transform into Meloetta Pirouette mode, which is different. It gets a 128 attack, right? Instead of special attack, you go attack. And what I've actually done on the couple Meloetta teams I've built is I don't use Relic Song, and I kind of just play it like built as like a normal Psychic type. Because I feel like gaining a bunch of those weaknesses to Fairy is not great. You know, but you can go to a physical attacker, you can give it close combat and do all that different stuff. I think I like to use it a little bit more with like, you know, I played it with Hyper Voice when I played it. So I could still do that good AoE damage, but I didn't have to swap, and I played it with like Throat Spray, you know. That's how I like to play this thing. And then, like, it gets access to, like, Trick Room, solid. Like, this is a good stat line. 100, 128, 128, 90. Very, very solid, right? And it's also, yeah, you're right. The 10% chance to sleep is also boosted by Serene Grace. You're right. And then it gets access to things like coaching. Like, it gets weird moves. You want to lean into these weird moves, I think, to make an actual, like, role for this Pokemon. It gets Helping Hand. It gets Perish Song. It's one of the... I think when Wolf finally makes a team for this format, he's probably going to use Meloetta with Perish Song. Gets Relic Song, obviously. Bunch of cool stuff. It gets Triple Axle for that, you know, fighting type aggressive one. It gets Gravity for Darkrai. I think this is a Mon that has like a relatively high skill ceiling too that people aren't going to find out. I built it when I built my team. If you guys want to check out that video right here, it's built with Teeter Dance. I think it's just such a cool Mon. It can do so many different little things, and I really like that they changed up a lot of the base stats on this guy. Having that 100 base HP that all the other big mythicals have and then like getting a little more special attack, a little more spadef, you can find a little bit better niche for this mon. And having psychic normal typing actually gives you a much better matchment in things like Shadow Rider. So it's actually a usable mon in my opinion. And that being said, where would I put it? I think it's better than D. I think it's better than C. It's probably in the C tier, but probably like right here. There's arguments to be made for it going here though. I think that actually it might go here because like in the games that I played with it in, it needed a lot of babysitting. And then once I got up the Trick Room or the speed control, I couldn't like really do that much because I couldn't one-shot anything. Like, let's think about it. Let's compare Meloetta to like a Kali I. Like, Kali I gets up the Trick Room and then they're dead. Meloetta gets up the Trick Room and it's like, okay, now what? You know, it's like, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just kind of like hard to use. Like, let's compare it to like even these two other Trick Room setters. These guys get up the Trick Room and they start doing stuff. They start hitting. They start stacking boosts. Meloetta gets up the Trick Room and it's like, Relic Song? Do I want to be a frail fighting type? You know, it's not great. We're going to take a look at Hoopa, both forms of Hoopa, because both forms of Hoopa do slightly different things, just like Meloetta and all the other little guys. So Hoopa Unbound. Let's take a look at Hoopa Unbound first. But you can see the difference in these guys is Hoopa Unbound gets a little bit faster, gets a little bit stronger in both the special attack and notably that big 50 boost to attack. Retains the same HP. They both have the ability Magician. And the thing that sets these guys apart is this Hoopa gets a move called Hyperspace Fury. It's a physical move. It breaks Protect and gives you a defense drop. The other Hoopa gets this one, Hyperspace Hole. I think a couple of gens ago, both Hoopas could get both, but they nerfed it to where the little guy gets this one, which is a Break Protect 80 base power special. And both of them accuracy don't have accuracy checks, by the way. They're really good stuff. But being able to Break Protect, this ain't your man. This is a Urshifu, right? This is a Urshifu Dark over here. Psychic Dark typing, very, very cool. It also gets like weird moves like Trick Room. It's cool that a lot of these mythicals, I'm sure you're noticing a pattern, they just get Trick Room. And that, I'm not saying you have to build them on a Trick Room team. You know how goes it? But what you do, you can just throw Trick Room on these guys, give them some bulk, and if a Trick Room goes up, flip it back. Like, easy peasy, good stuff. It gets access to, like, Ally Switch. One of the cool things about Hoopa is you can play it both physical or special. It's funny, we're talking about what physical Hoopa does. This guy's more commonly built as a special attacker with, like, Expanding Force. You can just go Expanding Force and Dark Pulse and just, like, dump truck like Bandit Hoopa. I like physical Hoopa, right? Psychic Dark is really nice. Speaking about Psychic, its ability Magician says when a Pokemon has no item, it steals an item. So like you can pair Hoopa with like a Psy Seeds and really enable this 130 base Spadef, and then when you hit them with like an Expanding Force, you take their item. It's so good. Like this Pokemon's actually really, really nice. I think more people should be using Hoopa. Gets a lot of really cool tech moves. Bandit Force is still a really good move on it. It gets access to like the taunts, the throat chops, tricks if you want to use a choice set. I like this guy a lot. And then also it gets like gets some really, really weird moves. So I think Hoopa is definitely viable. How does someone get Hoopa? They gave it out as an event mon like a decade ago. I think that's the only way I know how to get it. That's how I got mine. But it's a cool mon, the base, the Unbound Hoopa. I think the Unbound Hoopa is a lot better than, the other one, the Bound Hoopa. But I would put it at the bottom of A tier. I think it's better than Deoxys because it's Ghost. It's just Ghost. And so, like, if you're looking to play, like, a different way of TR, this is one of the really cool mons to do it. So like redirection TR with this guy, and then you just break their protects and start swinging. It's so good. It does a lot of the same things Deoxys Speed does. When it gets the big Expanding Force, a lot of the same ways you want to play this, like Hoopa can work just as well. Yeah, you didn't realize it hit that hard. This mon is like nuts. Hoopa's really, really good. And people, it's deceptively bulky because like, it has that big 130, but it has an 80 base HP. A lot of the other mons you're comparing, like the 130s, 140s on the Spadef stats, they have like 50 base HP. Hoopa has an 80. It's bulky on the Spadef side. And it has 80 base speed, which is more than enough to actually function in this format. So let's take a look at the other Hoopa. The other Hoopa is going to be right here. Still gets Magician. I like to pair this guy on like a Seeds. So what I've done is I paired this with Electric Seeds. And here I paired it with Miraidon. So you set the Electric Seed and you kind of just sat there with your Hoopa and you Magician to take their items. And I paired it with like, I think I had Trick Room on it. But like you use the Hyperspace Hole and I paired it with like a bunch of other mons like Broke Protect. I paired it with like a Urshifu. I paired it with an Iron Boulder. And you just made a whole team of stuff that just like broke their Protect. It was really, really fun. Gets Ally Switch. You played this guy a little bit more supporty. I think I might have even had like Taunt on it. I think I played it like that. You had enough speed to make it work. But it's a usable mon. It still gets 110 attack too. If you want to build this guy physical, you still definitely can. It's stronger than like a Flygon, right? Actually, how strong is Flygon? Am I wrong? Bro, it's stronger than Flygon, dude. People like to think it's like, oh, little baby Hoopa, weak. It's a 150, right? This is strong, right? Baby Hoopa is as strong as a Shadow Rider almost. Like a modest Hoopa is almost as strong as a Shadow Rider. It might even be stronger, right? So this guy, 217, Hoopa goes 222. Stronger than Shadow Rider in the special attack department. Stronger than Flygon in the, what is it? In the physical department. Right? That's kind of just, that's busted, man. That's busted. Hoopa can do a little bit of everything out here. 60 base defense kind of lame, right? Maybe compare it with like a Grassy Seeds Real Boom for some sustain, get that defense boost, make this guy have a little bit more value. It's a little bit slower than the other Hoopa too, so if you wanted to pair it on like a Trick Room team, you definitely could. I think this mon's cool. I think it definitely is usable, but it's one of those mons that like does need a lot of babysitting. I think it's in the C tier. I think it's better than Keldeo. I don't think it's better than Manaphy. But it's not like a D tier mon. This mon can definitely hold its own in a lot of like matchups. It's that big special attack stat that does a lot of work for it. We're going to take a look at Volcanion next. We're rounding out the end of this. And Volcanion. Volcanion's a cool mon. Volcanion was the first mon that I built a team for in Reg J. It gets Water Absorb, and I think a lot of people don't really respect Volcanion because it's wasting so many points in offense and attack. But it has 80 base HP, 90 base PDF, 130, 120. Great stat line here. This guy gets a lot of really cool moves. He gets a signature move, which is Steam Eruption, which is basically like a much stronger Scald that can actually now miss. 30% chance to burn, so it's not like amazing here. But the fact that you're a Water Fire with Water Absorb, this is one of the most unique typings in the game. Like this guy just walks up to Kali-I and says, give me your lunch money, you know? Like very, very cool mon. The issue with Volcanion, while it does get access to like these really aggressive typings in like Fire and Water, is it doesn't have a lot of other support moves. Yeah, it gets things like Haze, but like it doesn't get like an Icy Wind. It can get Taunt, it can get Wisp, it can Weather Ball, it can Earth Power, but it's really missing that like, you know, you play like a set like this, and then you have this last move be like a tech move. And Volcanion's really lacking what that is. There's no Trick Room to put here. It doesn't get Trick Room, it doesn't get Recover, and so like, you could put Taunt. It's the only Fire Water type? Yeah, I think it is the only Fire Water type. What a lot of people do with this guy is they just throw like an Earth Power here and they make it into like a big sweeper. But like, you know, on a lot of mons, you'd want to put like Recover, Icy Wind, Wide Guard, Trick Room. Volcanion doesn't really get that, right? Doesn't get that last little bit of like viability. It's cool it gets, I didn't even know it got Misty Terrain. That's kind of cool. You can play it with a bunch of different sets. I actually have a Volcanion team coming out in a couple days that uses... Let me see if I can find it for you guys because it's actually a really, really cool one. So he's like a Heatran. Yeah, he's just like a Heatran. He looks like a Heatran. He talks like a Heatran. He walks like a Heatran. And, you know, it might just be a Heatran if that's what it's like. So my Volcanion team is actually using like Grassy Seeds with Solar Beam, Double Dip Grass Terra. I think it's a very, very cool mon. I think Volcanion's very fun to use. It gets enough speed to actually function in this format. 80 is like a pretty decent number. This is going to outspeed you know, base 135s. So this is a cool Volcanion team. You're gonna lean into what makes it unique. What would they not expect? They'd be like, okay, well, if you're using Volcanion, I'll just go to a water type. And it's like, cool, go to a water type, bro. I'm cooking, bro. Like literally, like Solar Beam Ds, bro. Grassy Seed gives it a little bit of bulk, a little bit of sustain. Lean into that taunt when you can. So make Volcanion work. It's a cool mon. Definitely more than usable in Reg J, in my opinion. So where would I put it? It doesn't get a lot of speed control, so it's very reliant on its teammates to set that speed control. But you can pair it next to like a Flutter, be good, next to like a Wims. Tornadus is a really good Pokemon to pair it next to. I think it might be better than some of these. It's not better than base Deoxys though, but that being said, it might be. I'm being very stingy with my B tier. Can you guys tell? I'm being kind of stingy with it. Like, I feel like one of these might be able to go into C. This guy might be able to go into A. But, like, I'm being stingy with it. I think it's, like, right in the middle of the pack. Usable mon for sure. I think AV is another very solid Volcanion set. Back in the day, that's what I definitely played with was AV in Sword and Shield. We played a lot of that. So it's a good mon for sure. Let's take a look at Mew. Mew is a unique mon, right? Mew's a little bit out there, right? So Mew, similar to Arceus, can learn all the TMs and stuff like that. So it gets synchronized, has base 100s across the board, but Mew gets some moves that Arceus doesn't, notably transform. This thing can transform. The set that a lot of people play on ladder is this. They transform an opponent's Pokemon and they imprison, right? And I don't think this is worth it. It takes 2 turns. It loses to like redirections, fake outs, speed controls, and all that just to be like, "Ha, you're imprisoned on something that you didn't think you did imprison." It's like, bro, just put, instead of transform imprison, just put the freaking move that you want to imprison on the Mew. It's like, oh, what, you don't want to get Hydro Pumped? It's like, just freaking put Hydro Pump on it and just click imprison. Like, you see what I mean? You see what I mean? It's different when Smeargle transforms. Yeah, Smeargle can do other stuff, but you see what I mean? Like, Mew can learn so many moves. Just pick the move that you don't want to get imprisoned, or that you don't want to get hit by. I think Mew, though, is very good. It gets the Tailwinds, the Trick Rooms, the Life Dews, the Encores, the Expanding Force. Just use a Ditto. Yeah, I agree. I think Ditto's better than using that whole Imprison Trick Rooms, or Imprison strategy. That was really good back when Dynamax was a thing, because you stopped out a Maxmon. But it's just too niche to use now. But I think Mew is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. I've built it with like Meteor Beam. It gets things like Pollen Puff. It gets so many good moves. So many good moves. You never know where a Mew's going to go. Is it going to set Gravity? Is it going to set Tailwind, Trick Room? Is it going to set like, is it going to U-turn? Is it Banded? Is it Specs? Is it Sashed? I think the fact that this is like a closed sheet format, is it going to be policy procking? Is it going to be the recipient of a policy proc? The fact that Mew can do literally anything means your opponent has to respect every single option. So when you pair Mew with something also like a Hisuian Zoroark or like a Smeargle, right? You start to see how like the shenanigans can start to like compound, and your opponent has to respect like they get like information overload situation, and they just default into like saying like, screw it, I'm just going redirection Trick Room, and you're like, thank you for being normal, you lose, right? It's pretty great. I think Mew's so good. I think every single Mew team I've made has been freaking awesome and like crazy. Like this team right here with the backs, we used like Lava Plume like Mew to like go policy proc our backs caliber, give it a thermal exchange weakness policy proc, and like absolutely dumpster them into like a nightmare. And you say Mew sounds like a CTS nightmare, like, and that's the thing. This is only a CTS format. It's not used at regionals. It's only used best of one ladder. So like, where do we put Mew? Right? I think Mew's an A tier mon, because it can do anything. And it's the exact opposite of like what Arceus is weak against if you're talking about like a normal Arceus. And the fact that Mew can like hold like items and stuff like that too, without being like kind of built in with the plates, means you have to respect Scarf Mew, Sash Mew, Goggles Mew. Yeah, I feel like if you want to lean into Mew, this is the most high skill ceiling Pokemon, because it has to deal with like, it's not as strong as Arceus. You got to be even more creative. This Pokemon I can make a new Mew team every single day and do something completely different for like months. And like, I'm sure you guys would like it because it would be stupid and fun, right? Mew is so ridiculous, and it's just a fun mon. It's a really fun mon, and more people should figure out fun ways to use it. Another cool thing is if you want to use like Scarf Mew Transform, if you Scarf Transform into something, you still hold the Scarf, but you're not locked into Transform, and then you can relock into something else and just pop them. Like, that's one of my favorite techs too. It's really cool. More people should use Scarf Mew in this format. Very, very underrated mon. That being said, we have 2 more. We already did Keldeo, right? We put the Keldeo. This is the base form Keldeo. It technically goes right there because it doesn't have Secret Sword, right? Zygarde, or Zarude, sorry, Zarude. Zarude. So you can see there's 2 forms of Zarude. There's one called Dada because it has a little scarf here, but they're exactly the same. I know they gave this one out as an event a while back, but this guy actually gets some pretty good stats. 105 is above that base 100, which is kind of like where things get fast. 105 defense is underrated. 120 on attack is a little low. 105 HP is actually really nice to be able to compare with that 105 defense. This guy's a lot bulkier than people really give it credit for. So like when you see people using like Sash on this guy, not a good idea. Not right. It's too bulky to use Sash. You could be leveraging like Seeds, AV, Scarf, Band, Life Orb on this guy, in my opinion. It gets a signature move called Jungle Healing. Jungle Healing here, it's basically a Lunar Blessing, but it came out first. There's also its ability Leaf Guard kind of sucks on this guy, especially because we have Jungle Blessing. But that being said, it's cool. Being able to heal yourself and your teammates is good in this format. It just sucks this guy's on like a Grass Dark Mon, really susceptible to Intimidate. It gets good coverage, but I feel like this is a really hard mon to use. I've only made 2 Zarude teams. I think the one that was most popular so far was Scarfed, and it's cool. It's usable, but I don't think it's like great. I saw someone say, what is it? They said that Jungle Healing, they thought it restored more in Sun, which I think if this restored 50% in Sun, that would actually make a really cool, unique playstyle with like Leaf Guard, Jungle Healing, restoring 50% to you and your teammate, right? Hates to see a U-turn coming, I know, right? Dark Grass is not doing it any favors. That being said, it gets its own access to U-turn. It gets that big stab knockoff. You can go for like Petal Blizzard. That's how I played it when I played it with like a Sap Sipper Mons. It gets Power Whip. It gets Trailblaze. This guy's a lot better in like singles draft leagues in my opinion. Great mon in singles draft leagues. It gets Close Combat. I think it's a good mon. I like when the mythicals deviate from just like 100s across the board and kind of mix it up a little bit. So I like this guy a lot. I think it's really good. Where would I put it? I would definitely think about putting it in the C tier. I think it's probably right about here is where I would put it. I think Manaphy might be. So last mon is going to be Petrarun, right? So Petrarun is the newest mythical on this list. It's from, Scarlet and Violet. Petrarun's actually really cool. I love this stat spread. 88s across the board, but then a 160 defense. 160 defense on 88 base HP is actually really nice. It gets Poison Puppeteer as its ability. It says if this Pokemon poisons a target, so it has to be Petrarun. It has to be Petrarun that it poisoned it right when it poisoned it. If they get poisoned by Petrarun and switch out and switch back in, it does not work. They get confused. And then it has a signature move called Malignant Chain, which has a 50% chance to apply badly poison or toxic to them. So this Pokemon's like really cool. I've seen a lot of people pairing this with like seeds. I think like Psy Seeds Petrarun is good. You can still go Leftovers or Black Sludge. I've even seen a couple AV Petraruns. What's really cool about this guy that makes it usable, similar to a lot of the other mons on this list that are usable, is it gets all this tech, all this bulk, and it gets actual recovery. Recovery is so important in these formats, in these mythical formats, in my opinion. It's a very, very like underrated mechanic. It gets like Shadow Ball too. You can also even go, if you want to be like a bully, you can go things like Hex. Very, very cool. Double Stab. Ghost. Poison. Very, very unique typing. I think this mon's cool. A lot of people kind of just play it like this. I've only used a couple teams with Petrarun, right? I think I've only used a couple teams with it. I like to go dark when I do this to lose our weakness to both Ghost and Psychic. I think it's definitely a usable mon. Gets Foul Play though, Destiny Bond, Parting Shot is the move this guy gets that a lot of people kind of forget on. I'm not big on the Parting Shot. I kind of just want to use what I want to use. It doesn't get Trick Room. I think if this guy got Trick Room, it would actually be kind of broken. If it got Trick Room, I'm really kind of glad they didn't give it to it. But it's a cool mon. You get things like Smog if you want to use that. I think it also gets Sludge Wave. Does it get what is that move? It gets Poison Gas. Yeah, so you can Poison Gas to get both Poison Puppeteer on both your opponent's Pokemon that way if you want to do that. So I think it's a really, really usable mon. I've used it on a couple teams so far. It's a lot of fun. I think it kind of can float on like a lot of different teams as a good defensive pivot. Being Ghost and Poison, those are some of the most defensive types in the game. So that being said, where would we finally put the last mon on the list? It's definitely at least up here. It's better than this. It's better than this. It's better than this. I would put it here. I like Petrarun because it is so good into like Zenta. It is a 100% Zenta check. They will not break this guy. You can't really do that much to them either. Maybe it goes in the B tier. It probably goes in the B tier. Was that a follow? Hey, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. I'm going to put my Petrarun right there. And that is going to be... Weird Out doesn't get Clear Smog. I know, right? That'd be kind of busted. It's only the other types of smugs, right? So that is going to be my Reg J tier list. If you guys want to see a full tier list ranking all of these Pokemon in addition to all the other, restricted Pokemons like Koraidons, Miraidons, Callies, let me know if you guys want to see something like that. Also, let me know if you guys want to see tier lists for other formats like Reg H. I know a lot of people are still playing a lot of Reg H. So let me know if you guys want to see something like that. And don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. Check out all these teams like I just mentioned, all these sets that I talked about and explained why I like them. I feature them in a lot of these videos. So think about checking out the YouTube. Think about dropping a sub if you guys are interested in helping us get to 50K before the next Legends game come out. And other than that, peace out, everybody. See you guys next time.